You should be grateful, Faith. Life is fair." Those words hung in the air like a death sentence as I stared at the ceramic mug in my hands. It was white with faded blue letters that read, "World's Okayest Daughter." The price tag was still stuck to the bottom. $5.47 from the clearance bin at the dollar store 3 blocks from our house. I knew because I had seen it there myself 2 weeks ago, and thought someone would have to be truly heartless to give that to their own child. Turns out, my mother was that someone. Across the living room, my younger sister Brittany stood beside a brand new Lexus LX 600 parked in our driveway, visible through the massive bay windows my parents had installed last summer. The car was midnight black with chrome accents, and someone had tied an enormous gold bow across the hood like something out of a luxury car commercial. The price tag on that gift was $117,000. I knew because my father had announced it proudly when he handed Brittany the keys, his voice booming with excitement. "My name is Faith. I am 29 years old, and I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, in this very house where I was currently standing with a $5 mug, while my sister posed for photos with her 6-figure vehicle. For as long as I could remember, this had been the pattern of my life. Brittany received, and I watched. Brittany was celebrated, and I was tolerated. Brittany was the daughter they wanted, and I was simply the daughter they had first." "Did you hear me?" my mother asked, her voice carrying that familiar edge of impatience she reserved specifically for me. "I said you should be grateful." I looked up from the mug and met her eyes. Diana was 53 years old, still beautiful in that polished country club way that she cultivated with weekly salon appointments and monthly spa treatments. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her Christmas sweater probably costing more than my entire month's grocery budget. "Grateful," I repeated, testing the word on my tongue like something bitter. "Yes, grateful. Not everyone gets anything for Christmas. Some people have nothing." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded slowly, the way I had learned to do over 29 years of being the afterthought in my own family. Through the window, I watched my father, Gregory, wrap his arm around Brittany's shoulders as she held up the keys, both of them grinning for my aunt's camera phone. My sister was 25 years old, worked part-time at a boutique downtown, and had never paid a single bill in her entire life. She still lived at home, in the bedroom that had been renovated 3 times to accommodate her changing tastes. Meanwhile, I had moved out at 18, put myself through college while working 2 jobs, and now managed the accounting department at Hollowgate Systems, a manufacturing company where I had worked my way up from entry-level data entry over 7 years. But none of that mattered to my parents. It never had. "Faith, come outside and take a picture with your sister," my aunt called from the doorway, her voice cheerful and oblivious to the tension radiating from my body. I set the mug down on the coffee table and walked toward the door, my movements mechanical. The December air bit at my cheeks as I stepped onto the porch, and I wrapped my arms around myself, wishing I had grabbed my coat. "Stand next to Brittany," my father instructed, not looking at me. "Try to smile." I positioned myself beside my sister, who was practically glowing with satisfaction. She smelled like the new perfume she had also received that morning, some designer fragrance that came in a crystal bottle. "Can you believe it?" Brittany whispered to me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Daddy said I deserved something special for finally finishing my associate's degree." She had taken 6 years to complete a 2-year degree. I had finished my bachelor's in 3.5 while working full-time. "Congratulations," I managed to say, the words scraping against my throat. The camera flashed, and I knew without looking that the photo would show Brittany radiant and beautiful beside her luxury vehicle, while I stood slightly hunched, slightly faded, slightly invisible. Just the way it had always been. As we filed back inside for Christmas brunch, I caught my mother watching me with that familiar expression of mild disappointment. She had worn that look at my high school graduation, my college graduation, my promotion celebration, and every other milestone I had ever achieved. Nothing I did was ever quite enough to earn the approval she gave Brittany, simply for existing. Faith, could you help set the table? Diana asked. Brittany is too excited to focus right now. Of course she was. And of course I would help, because that was my role in this family. I was the helper, the worker, the one who showed up and did what needed to be done while receiving nothing but criticism in return. I grabbed the stack of plates from the china cabinet and began placing them around the dining room table, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced with thoughts I had suppressed for years. This Christmas felt different somehow. The mug sat on the coffee table like evidence of a crime, and something inside me had shifted when I saw those faded blue letters. World's okayest daughter. Maybe that was exactly what they thought of me. As I arranged the silverware beside each plate, memories flooded through me like water breaking through a dam. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone where my sister had been showered with attention while I stood in the shadows, watching and waiting for scraps of affection that never came. I thought about my 16th birthday, when my parents had thrown Brittany an elaborate party for her 10th birthday the same week and told me we would celebrate mine later. Later never came. Instead, I received a card with $20 inside and a mumbled apology about being too busy with Brittany's event to plan anything for me. I thought about my high school graduation, when my father had spent the entire ceremony on his phone, texting updates to relatives about Brittany's dance recital happening the following weekend. He never even looked up when I walked across the stage. I thought about college, when I had asked my parents for help with tuition and they had laughed, actually laughed, and told me that money was being saved for Brittany's education because she would need more support than me. "You're smart enough to figure it out," my mother had said. "Brittany needs us more." I thought about the Christmas 3 years ago, when I had saved for months to buy my parents an expensive espresso machine they had mentioned wanting. They had opened it, glanced at it briefly, and then spent the next hour exclaiming over the designer handbag they had bought for Brittany. The espresso machine sat unused in their garage to this day. I thought about last Thanksgiving, when I had driven 4 hours through a snowstorm to be with my family, only to arrive and discover they had eaten without me, because Brittany was hungry and could not wait. My plate sat cold on the counter, while they laughed and reminisced about family memories that somehow never included me. The pattern was so consistent, so relentless, that I had convinced myself it was normal. That all families had a favorite child, and I simply happened not to be it. That I was being dramatic or sensitive whenever I felt the sting of their rejection. That if I just worked harder, achieved more, proved myself worthy, eventually they would see me. But standing in that dining room with a stack of plates in my hands and a $5 mug mocking me from the living room, I finally understood the truth. They did see me. They had always seen me. And they had made a deliberate choice, year after year, to treat me as less than. "Faith, the napkins need to be folded properly," my mother said, appearing beside me with that critical eye she wielded like a weapon. "Not like that. Here, let me show you." She took the napkin from my hands and demonstrated the elaborate fold she preferred, as if I had not done this exact task at every family gathering for the past decade. As if I was incapable of learning even the simplest things. "Sorry," I said, the word automatic and hollow. "You should pay more attention. Brittany would have done it correctly the first time." I doubted that very much, considering Brittany had never folded a napkin in her life, but I said nothing. I simply nodded and continued working, my jaw tight with words I was not allowed to speak. When the table was set and the food was arranged, the family gathered for brunch. My father sat at the head of the table, Brittany at his right hand like royalty. My mother sat at the other end, with my aunt beside her. I was placed in the middle, neither important enough to anchor the table, nor beloved enough to sit beside my parents. "Let's go around and say what we're grateful for," my father announced, raising his glass of orange juice. "Brittany, you start." My sister smiled that dazzling smile that had gotten her everything she ever wanted. I'm grateful for the best parents in the world who always support me and believe in me. And for my amazing new car, obviously. Everyone laughed warmly, and my father beamed with pride. "I'm grateful for this wonderful family," my mother continued, "and for another year of health and happiness." My aunt echoed similar sentiments, and then all eyes turned to me. I felt their gazes like spotlights, waiting for me to perform gratitude I did not feel. "I'm grateful for clarity," I said quietly. A brief silence followed my words, and I saw my mother's eyes narrow slightly. "Clarity about what?" Brittany asked, her tone carrying an edge of challenge. "About a lot of things," I replied. "About what matters, about where I stand." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, that's nice, Faith. Very thoughtful. Now let's eat before the food gets cold." The meal proceeded without further incident, but I could feel my mother watching me throughout. She knew something had shifted. She could sense the change in me the way animals sense an approaching storm. But she said nothing, probably assuming that whatever momentary rebellion was brewing in me would pass, as it always had before. After brunch, I helped clear the dishes while Brittany gave tours of her new car to relatives who had stopped by to admire it. The kitchen felt suffocating, the walls closing in around me as I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher. "You seem quiet today," my aunt observed, drying a serving dish beside me. "Just tired," I lied. "The holidays can be exhausting," she agreed, oblivious to the real reason for my silence. I finished the dishes in mechanical silence, my mind elsewhere entirely. I was thinking about my apartment across town, the one-bedroom space I rented that had become my sanctuary from this house. I was thinking about my bank account, the savings I had accumulated through years of careful budgeting. I was thinking about the life I had built for myself, separate from this family who treated me like an afterthought, and I was thinking about what I was going to do next. The afternoon stretched on endlessly, as relatives cycled through the house to admire Brittany's car. Each visitor exclaimed over the leather interior, the advanced technology, the sheer luxury of a vehicle that cost more than many people's annual salaries. And each time, my parents glowed with pride, basking in the reflected glory of their younger daughter's gift. No one mentioned my mug. No one asked what I had received. No one even seemed to notice I was there, standing in the corner of the living room like a piece of furniture that had always existed but never warranted attention. "The heated seats are incredible," my cousin Jennifer gushed, after taking a ride around the block with Brittany. "You're so lucky, Brittany. Your parents are amazing." "I know," Brittany replied, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "They really are the best." I watched my mother practically vibrate with satisfaction at the compliments. She had always cared deeply about appearances, about how others perceived our family. The expensive car was not just a gift to Brittany. It was a statement to the world about their success, their generosity, their status as excellent parents. Never mind that one of their daughters had received nothing but insult disguised as a present. That part of the story would never be told. As the afternoon light began to fade, I found myself standing by the window in my old bedroom. My parents had converted it into a guest room years ago, erasing all traces of my existence from the space where I had spent my childhood. The walls that once held my posters and photographs were now painted a neutral beige, decorated with generic artwork from a home goods store. It was as if I had never lived here at all. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find Brittany leaning against the doorframe, her expression smug. "Enjoying the view?" she asked, gesturing toward the driveway where her Lexus gleamed in the fading sunlight. "It's a nice car," I said flatly. "Nice?" She laughed, the sound sharp and condescending. "It's a $117,000 vehicle, Faith. Nice doesn't even begin to cover it." "Then what word would you use?" "Deserved," she said without hesitation. "I've worked hard, and Mom and Dad recognize that. Unlike some people, I don't expect handouts." The irony of her statement was so profound that I almost laughed. Brittany, who had never paid rent, never bought her own groceries, never struggled for anything in her entire life, was lecturing me about not expecting handouts. Right, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Congratulations again. You could try being happy for me, you know. She stepped closer, her eyes searching my face for signs of the jealousy she clearly hoped to find. But I guess that's too much to ask from someone like you. Someone like me? Someone who's always been jealous of what I have. Mom told me you've been sulking all day about your present. She said you should be grateful to get anything at all, considering how little you contribute to this family. The words landed like physical blows, but I refused to show the impact. I had spent 29 years absorbing hits like these, and I had learned to keep my face perfectly blank, even when my heart was breaking. I'm not sulking, I said calmly. And I am grateful. Grateful for the clarity. Brittany rolled her eyes. There you go with that clarity nonsense again. What does that even mean? It means I finally understand exactly where I stand in this family. Something in my tone must have caught her attention because her smug expression flickered briefly, but she recovered quickly, tossing her hair again with practiced nonchalance. You've always stood in the same place, she said. Behind me. Where you belong. She turned and walked away, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors my parents had installed last year. I watched her go, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter and more dangerous. Resolve. The evening meal was a casual affair, leftovers from brunch arranged on the kitchen counter for people to pick at. I sat at the kitchen island, pushing food around my plate while conversations swirled around me. Brittany, we should take the car on a road trip, my mother suggested excitedly. Maybe to that spa in Tennessee you've been wanting to visit. Oh my gosh, yes! Brittany clapped her hands together. That would be perfect. A mother-daughter trip in my new car. I waited for someone to include me in the invitation. I waited for the words, Faith should come too, or we could make it a family trip, or even just a glance in my direction to acknowledge my existence. The invitation never came. They continued planning their trip, discussing dates and destinations and all the shopping they would do, as if I was not sitting 3 feet away, invisible and irrelevant. That was when I made my decision. I excused myself from the kitchen and went to my old bedroom, closing the door quietly behind me. The guest bed was neatly made with pillows I did not recognize, and a decorative throw blanket was draped across the foot like something from a hotel. Nothing in this room belonged to me anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number for my apartment complex. I had been month to month for a while, but I had been considering signing a longer lease. Now that consideration became certainty. I texted my friend Gina, who had offered to help me move some furniture I had been storing. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Around 10? Her response came quickly. Of course. Everything okay? Everything is about to be, I typed back. I had spent my entire life waiting for my family to see me, to value me, to treat me with the basic dignity I deserved. I had contorted myself into whatever shape I thought might earn their approval, sacrificing my own needs and desires in pursuit of love that was never offered. Tonight, that ended. Tonight, I would leave behind more than just this house. I would leave behind the version of myself that had accepted crumbs while watching my sister feast. I would leave behind the belief that I was somehow less deserving, less worthy, less than. And I would walk into a future where I was finally, completely, free. I emerged from the bedroom around 8 o'clock that evening, my decision made but my face betraying nothing. Years of practice had taught me how to mask my emotions around my family, and that skill served me well as I navigated the remaining hours of Christmas Day. The living room was warm and glowing, a fire crackling in the fireplace, while my family lounged on expensive sofas discussing plans for the new year. Brittany was scrolling through her phone, probably posting photos of her new car to social media. My mother was flipping through a magazine, occasionally showing pages to my aunt. My father dozed in his recliner, his belly full from the day's feasting. I sat in the armchair by the window, the one piece of furniture that had somehow become mine over the years, because no one else wanted it. It was positioned slightly apart from the main seating area, close enough to technically be included, but far enough to feel isolated. "Faith, you've been so quiet today," my aunt observed from her spot on the sofa. "Is everything all right?" Before I could respond, my mother answered for me. "Faith is just being Faith," Diana said with a dismissive wave. "She gets moody around the holidays. She should be grateful she has family to spend time with instead of sitting alone in that tiny apartment of hers." The comment stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm fine, Aunt Patricia. Just tired from the drive yesterday." "The drive?" My mother's voice sharpened. "It's barely 45 minutes from your place. Brittany drove 3 hours last month to visit her friend in Cincinnati and didn't complain once." Of course she didn't. Brittany never had to complain because everything in her life was handed to her without effort. "I wasn't complaining," I said quietly. "I was just explaining why I might seem tired." "You always have an excuse," my mother continued, her magazine forgotten now as she focused her attention on me. "That's been your problem your whole life, Faith. You never just accept things gracefully. You always have to make it about you." I felt my hands clench in my lap, hidden from view. The irony of being accused of making things about myself by a woman who had spent the entire day celebrating one daughter while ignoring the other was almost too much to bear. "I'm not making anything about me," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'm sitting here quietly, not bothering anyone." "Your attitude is bothering me," Diana snapped. "You should be happy for your sister. She worked hard for that car." "She didn't work for the car," I said before I could stop myself. "You and Dad bought it for her." The room went silent. My father stirred in his recliner, blinking awake at the sudden tension. Brittany looked up from her phone, her eyes widening with interest at the prospect of conflict. "Excuse me?" My mother's voice was ice cold. "I just meant that Brittany didn't earn the money to buy the car herself. It was a gift. There's nothing wrong with that. But calling it hard work seems inaccurate." "Faith." My father's voice carried a warning I had heard countless times before. "That's enough." "I'm not trying to start anything," I said, holding up my hands in a gesture of peace. "I was just clarifying." "You were just being jealous," Brittany interrupted, setting down her phone with a dramatic sigh. "As usual. You can't stand that Mom and Dad love me more than you." The words hit like a punch to the gut, not because they were surprising, but because they were said so casually, so matter-of-factly, as if it were an obvious truth that everyone had always known. "Brittany," my aunt said uncomfortably, "that's not a nice thing to say." "Why not? It's true. Faith has always been jealous of me. That's why she moved out as soon as she could and barely visits. That's why she can't just be happy for me on Christmas. She's bitter because she knows she's the less successful daughter." I stared at my sister, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. She was not just spoiled. She was cruel. And worse, she had been taught to be cruel by parents who had always valued her over me. "I think I'll go to bed early," I said, standing from my chair. "Merry Christmas, everyone." "Faith, wait." My mother's voice stopped me at the doorway. "We need to talk about your attitude. This kind of behavior is exactly why you're still single at 29. Men don't want women who can't be happy for others." The comment was so absurd, so deeply inappropriate, that I almost laughed. My romantic life had nothing to do with this conversation. Yet my mother had found a way to weaponize it against me anyway. "You're right," I said, my voice flat. "Thank you for the feedback. I'll work on being more grateful." "Don't take that tone with me." "What tone?" I said thank you. I said I'd work on it. What more do you want from me?" My mother opened her mouth to respond, but my father cut her off. "Just go to bed, Faith. We'll talk about this tomorrow when everyone has calmed down." I nodded once and left the room, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and grief. They would never understand how their words affected me. They would never see the damage they had done over 29 years of making me feel invisible, unwanted, and inferior. But that was okay, because after tonight, their opinion of me would no longer matter. I closed the guest room door behind me and leaned against it, taking deep breaths to steady myself. The conversation had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. Whatever doubts I might have harbored about my decision had vanished completely. I pulled out my phone and began making a mental list of everything I needed to do. My apartment was already furnished. I had never truly moved out, just brought some clothes and toiletries for the Christmas visit. My car was parked on the street because the driveway had been cleared for Brittany's new Lexus. My purse was in the closet, containing my wallet, keys, and everything I needed to leave. All I had to do was wait. The next few hours passed in tense silence. I stayed in the guest room, ostensibly sleeping, but actually wide awake, listening to the sounds of my family moving through the house. Voices drifted up from downstairs, my mother's sharp tones, my father's rumbling responses, Brittany's occasional laughter. Around 11 o'clock, I heard someone climbing the stairs. There was a brief pause outside my door, then footsteps continuing down the hall to Brittany's bedroom. My mother, probably checking to make sure her precious daughter had everything she needed for the night. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, reviewing my plan. I would wait until everyone was asleep, probably around 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I would quietly gather my things and leave. I would not say goodbye. I would not leave a dramatic note explaining my feelings. I would simply remove myself from their lives the way they had removed me from their hearts years ago. But as the hours ticked by, I found myself reconsidering the note. Not a dramatic explanation. They would not care about my feelings anyway. But something simple and pointed. Something that would make clear this was not a spontaneous decision, but a deliberate choice. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, typing and deleting several versions before settling on something that felt right. Thank you for the clarity this Christmas provided. I wish you all a fair and balanced life, the kind you always told me I should be grateful for. My key is on the counter. Please don't contact me. Short, simple, and impossible to misunderstand. At 1:30 a.m., I heard the last sounds of movement cease. The house settled into that deep silence that only comes in the middle of the night, when everyone is finally asleep. I waited another 30 minutes to be safe, then carefully got out of bed. I dressed in the clothes I had laid out earlier: jeans, a warm sweater, my winter coat. I gathered my toiletries from the bathroom, moving as quietly as possible, and packed everything into my overnight bag. The guest room looked exactly as it had when I arrived, neutral and impersonal, as if I had never been there at all. How fitting. I crept down the stairs, avoiding the third step that always creaked, and made my way to the kitchen. The house was dark, except for the nightlight my mother kept plugged in near the stove, casting a soft glow over the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. I pulled my house key from my purse, the key my parents had given me years ago, back when they still pretended to want me around, and placed it carefully on the counter. Then I retrieved my phone and the folded note I had written, setting the paper beside the key. Standing in that kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my family's wealth and success, I felt a strange sense of peace. This house had never truly been my home. I had always been a visitor here, tolerated but not welcomed, included but not valued. Now I was making that arrangement official. I picked up the ceramic mug from where I had left it on the coffee table. World's okayest daughter. For a moment, I considered leaving it behind as evidence of their cruelty. But something made me decide to take it instead. A reminder of what I was walking away from. a symbol of the disrespect I would no longer accept. I tucked the mug into my bag and walked to the front door. Through the window, I could see Brittany's Lexus gleaming in the driveway, the gold bow still attached to the hood. $117,000 of parental love, wrapped up with a ribbon. I turned the deadbolt as slowly as possible, holding my breath against any sound. The lock clicked open with a soft snick, and I eased the door open just enough to slip through. The December air hit me like a wall, cold and bracing, and somehow exactly what I needed. I pulled my coat tighter and walked down the driveway, past my sister's luxury vehicle, to my own modest sedan parked on the street. My car was nothing special, a 10-year-old Honda with over 100,000 miles on it, but I had bought it myself with money I had earned. Every payment had been made on time, every repair handled without help from anyone. It represented everything I had accomplished despite my family's lack of support. I unlocked the door, tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. For a moment, I just sat there, looking at my parents' house through the windshield. The lights were all off. The curtains were drawn. They had no idea I was leaving. Part of me wanted to feel sad. This was, after all, the house where I had grown up, the yard where I had played as a child, the driveway where I had learned to ride a bike. But those memories felt distant and faded, overshadowed by years of neglect and favoritism that had erased whatever warmth this place once held. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, watching the house shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared around the corner. The drive to my apartment took about 45 minutes through empty streets. Louisville was quiet at 2 a.m. on Christmas night, most people still sleeping off their holiday celebrations. I passed darkened houses and closed businesses, the occasional traffic light blinking yellow in the deserted intersections. By the time I reached my apartment building, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone waiting to be loved, but the calm hope of someone who had finally taken control of their own life. I parked in my assigned spot, grabbed my bag, and walked up the 3 flights of stairs to my unit. The apartment was small, just a 1-bedroom with a galley kitchen and a tiny living room, but it was mine. I had decorated it myself, filled it with books and plants and artwork I actually liked. No neutral beige walls here, no generic hotel aesthetic. This space reflected who I was, not who my parents wanted me to be. I dropped my bag on the floor, hung up my coat, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me, twinkling with lights that had nothing to do with my family or their expectations. "Merry Christmas to me," I whispered to the empty room. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in years. I woke around 9 a.m. to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the unfamiliar sensation of peace. For a moment, I lay still, savoring the quiet. No footsteps in the hallway, no voices calling for breakfast, no underlying tension waiting to erupt into another round of criticism and comparison. Just silence. Beautiful, healing silence. I got up, made coffee in my small kitchen, and sat at my dining table, a second-hand piece I had found at an estate sale and refinished myself. The wood gleamed with the work I had put into it, and I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, feeling proud of what I had created. My phone sat on the counter, deliberately ignored. I knew what was waiting for me when I finally checked it. Missed calls, angry texts, demands for explanation. But those could wait. Right now, I wanted to enjoy my first morning of freedom. I had just finished my second cup of coffee when Gina knocked on my door. She was a colleague from work who had become a close friend over the years, one of the few people who truly understood my family situation. "How are you doing?" she asked as I let her in. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "It feels strange, but also right." Gina nodded, settling onto my couch with the ease of someone who had visited many times. "I'm glad you finally did it. You've been talking about cutting ties for years." Talking and doing are different things, I said. But yesterday was the last straw. I couldn't keep pretending their treatment was acceptable. What happened? I told her everything. The mug, the car, my mother's lecture about gratitude, Brittany's cruel comments. Gina listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from sympathy to anger to validation. They gave her a $100,000 car and you got a $5 mug? She repeated when I finished. And then had the audacity to tell you to be grateful? World's okayest daughter, I said, pulling the mug from my bag where I had stashed it the night before. That's literally what it says. Gina took the mug and stared at it, shaking her head in disbelief. This is sociopathic behavior. Normal families don't do this. My family isn't normal, I said. I always knew that, but I kept hoping things would change. That if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, they would finally see me as worthy. You were always worthy, Gina said firmly. Their inability to see that is their failure, not yours. We talked for another hour, discussing my plans for the future and the practical implications of cutting off my family. Gina offered to be my emergency contact, my support system, my chosen family in the absence of my biological one. Around 11 o'clock, I finally picked up my phone. 47 missed calls, 32 text messages. The earliest one had come at 7:23 a.m., probably when my mother woke up and discovered my key on the counter. I scrolled through the messages, watching the emotional arc unfold in real time. 7:23 a.m., Mom. Faith, where are you? Why is your key on the counter? 7:25 a.m., Mom. This isn't funny. Call me immediately. 7:31 a.m., Mom. I found your note. What is wrong with you? Come back home right now. 7:45 a.m., Brittany. Mom is freaking out, LOL. Where did you go? 7:52 a.m., Dad. Faith, your mother is very upset. Please call us. 8:15 a.m., Mom. This is absolutely unacceptable behavior. How dare you leave without saying goodbye, after everything we've done for you? 8:34 a.m., Mom. You're being incredibly selfish and dramatic, all because of a Christmas gift? Grow up. 8:47 a.m., Brittany. I always knew you were jealous of me, but this is pathetic. 9:02 a.m., Mom. I cannot believe I raised such an ungrateful daughter. You should be ashamed of yourself. 9:15 a.m., Dad. Faith, please reconsider. We can talk about this. 9:28 a.m., Mom. If you don't respond in the next hour, I'm going to assume you've completely lost your mind. 9:45 a.m., Mom. Fine, don't answer. But know that this has consequences. When you come crawling back, don't expect us to welcome you with open arms. 10:03 a.m., Brittany. Mom is literally crying because of you. Are you happy now? You ruined Christmas. The messages continued, growing increasingly frantic and angry as the morning progressed. My mother swung between threats and pleas, demanding I return while simultaneously telling me I was not welcome. Brittany alternated between mocking me and blaming me for our mother's distress. My father sent occasional messages asking me to call, his tone more measured but still carrying the expectation that I would comply. I read through every single message, feeling something shift inside me with each word. They were not apologizing. They were not reflecting on their behavior. They were not acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, they had done something wrong. They were angry that I had finally stood up for myself. What are you going to do? Gina asked, watching me scroll through my phone. Nothing, I said. I told them not to contact me. They can be as upset as they want, but I'm done explaining myself. They're going to keep calling. Then I'll block them. Gina raised an eyebrow. Are you ready for that? It's a big step. I thought about the mug, the car, the years of being overlooked and undervalued, the countless times I had tried to earn love that was freely given to my sister, just for existing. I've been ready for years, I said. I just didn't know it until now. I opened my phone settings and blocked my mother's number, then my father's, then Brittany's. One by one, I removed their ability to reach me, each tap of my finger feeling like a small act of liberation. When I was finished, I set the phone down on the table and looked at Gina. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. "I feel free." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity and conversation. Gina helped me rearrange my apartment, moving furniture and hanging pictures I had never gotten around to mounting. We ordered takeout and watched movies, creating new traditions to replace the toxic ones I had left behind. That night, as Gina was leaving, she hugged me tight. "You did the right thing," she said. "It's going to be hard sometimes, but you made the right choice." "I know," I said. For the first time in my life, I actually know that. After she left, I stood at my window again, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere across town, my family was probably still raging about my departure, still blaming me for ruining their perfect Christmas. But their anger could no longer touch me. I had built walls they could not penetrate, and I intended to keep them strong. Tomorrow I would go back to work, back to my life, back to the person I had always been capable of becoming, freed from the weight of their disapproval. The future stretched out before me, full of possibility. The days after Christmas settled into a rhythm of peace I had never experienced before. I went to work at Hollowgate Systems, threw myself into projects I had been putting off, and came home to an apartment that felt more like home with each passing day. My coworkers noticed the change in me immediately. "You seem lighter," my supervisor Thomas observed during our first meeting after the holiday. "Did you have a good Christmas?" "I had a transformative Christmas," I replied honestly. "I made some important decisions about my life." He nodded, probably assuming I meant something about career goals or personal resolutions. He had no idea I was referring to the complete severance of my family ties. The first real test came about a week after Christmas, when I received an email at work from an address I did not recognize. The subject line read, "From your father." I hesitated before opening it, my finger hovering over the delete button. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. "Faith," the email read, "since you have blocked our phone numbers, I am writing to you through this alternative method. Your mother has been inconsolable since you left. She cannot understand why you would abandon your family over a misunderstanding about Christmas gifts. We are willing to forget this incident if you will come home and apologize. Your room is still available, and we can discuss any issues you feel you have with our family dynamics. Please reconsider your decision. Your mother misses you. Dad." I read the email twice, analyzing every word. There was no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No recognition that perhaps a $5 mug versus a $117,000 car might constitute more than a misunderstanding. No indication that anything would change if I returned. Just an expectation that I would apologize and fall back in line. I hit delete without responding and blocked the email address for good measure. The next attempt came through my work phone. My mother must have looked up the general number for Hollowgate Systems and asked to be transferred to my extension. "Faith speaking," I said, not recognizing the incoming number. "Faith, it's your mother. Before you hang up, please listen." "How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been acting irrationally, and I'm worried about you. This isn't like you at all." "Actually," I said, keeping my voice professional in case anyone walked by my office. "This is exactly like me. It's who I've always been underneath the person you tried to make me into. Don't be dramatic. We gave you a perfectly nice gift, and you're acting like we committed a crime. You gave Brittany a $117,000 luxury vehicle. You gave me a $5 mug from the clearance bin that mocked me. And then you told me to be grateful because life is fair." Silence on the other end. Then, "We love both of our daughters equally. Your actions say otherwise. They've always said otherwise. But I'm done trying to prove myself worthy of your love. I'm done competing for affection that Brittany receives just for existing. You're being incredibly unfair. I have to go. Please don't call my work again." I hung up before she could respond, and immediately contacted our receptionist to add my mother's number to my blocked list. The receptionist, a kind woman named Dorothy who had worked at the company for decades, promised to handle it discreetly. The attempts continued over the following weeks. My mother sent letters to my apartment, which I returned unopened. Brittany created new social media accounts to message me after I blocked her original profiles. My father showed up at my apartment building once, but I saw him through the window and simply did not answer the door. Each attempt reinforced my conviction that I had made the right choice. They were not trying to reconcile or understand. They were trying to restore the status quo. They wanted the Faith who quietly accepted crumbs while watching Brittany feast. The Faith who did the dishes at family gatherings while her sister posed for photos. The Faith who showed up and performed gratitude regardless of how she was treated. That Faith was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, more certain of her own worth. Someone who had stopped measuring herself against her sister's reflection and started seeing her own image for the first time. Work became my sanctuary during those weeks. I poured my energy into projects and proposals, impressing my superiors with my dedication and focus. Thomas mentioned that a promotion might be coming my way, department manager, with a significant raise and expanded responsibilities. "You've really stepped up lately," he said during my quarterly review. "Whatever changes you made over the holidays, keep them going." "I intend to," I said. Outside of work, I built new connections. Gina introduced me to her book club, a group of women who met monthly to discuss literature and life. I joined a gym near my apartment and started taking yoga classes on Saturday mornings. I began cooking elaborate meals for myself, learning new recipes, and savoring food I actually enjoyed, rather than whatever my mother decided to serve. My apartment became a reflection of my growth. I painted the bedroom a deep teal that I had always loved, but never dared to choose in my childhood home. I hung artwork from local artists, supporting creatives whose work spoke to me. I filled my bookshelves with volumes that challenged and inspired me. For the first time in my life, I was building a home that felt like mine. The fallout from my departure continued to ripple through the family long after Christmas had passed. I learned about it secondhand, through relatives who reached out tentatively, unsure whose side to take in a conflict they barely understood. My Aunt Patricia called me about 3 weeks after Christmas, her voice cautious and concerned. "Faith, honey, I just wanted to check on you. Your mother is saying some things that don't sound like you at all." "What is she saying?" "That you had some kind of breakdown. That you abandoned the family without explanation. That you've been jealous of your sister for years and finally snapped." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Of course that's her version. Did she mention what they gave me for Christmas?" "A mug," she said, something thoughtful from a local shop. A $5 clearance item that said "World's Okayest Daughter," while Brittany received a $117,000 Lexus. Silence on the other end. Then, "She didn't mention that part." "No, I imagine she didn't." My aunt sighed heavily. "Faith, I've always known your parents favored Brittany. It's been obvious since you were children. But I never thought they would be this blatant about it." "It's been escalating for years," I said. "I just finally reached my breaking point." "What can I do? Is there anything you need?" The offer touched me more than I expected. My aunt had always been kind, even when the rest of my family treated me as an afterthought. "Just knowing someone believes me is enough," I said. "Thank you for calling." After we hung up, I felt a small crack in the isolation I had built around myself. Not everyone in my extended family was blind to my parents' favoritism. Some of them saw. Some of them cared. Over the following weeks, more relatives reached out. My cousin Jennifer, who had gushed over Brittany's car on Christmas Day, sent a long apologetic message saying she had no idea how unequal the gift-giving had been. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, called to tell me he supported my decision to step back from toxic relationships. Each conversation revealed more about how my parents had presented my departure. According to them, I was mentally unstable, jealous to the point of irrationality, and had completely fabricated any claims of unequal treatment. They painted themselves as loving parents victimized by an ungrateful daughter. But the truth has a way of emerging. My Aunt Patricia started asking questions. She mentioned to my mother that a $5 mug and a luxury car seemed quite different, and my mother had reportedly become defensive and evasive. Other relatives began comparing notes, noticing patterns they had overlooked or dismissed before. Meanwhile, Brittany's social media told its own story. She posted daily about her new car, photos of driving it, stories about where she went, complaints when it needed its first wash. The constant bragging began to grate on people, and I heard through the grapevine that several family members had muted her accounts. About 2 months after Christmas, I received an unexpected message from my mother. It came through a new email address, bypassing my blocks. Faith, I hope you're satisfied. Your stunt has divided the entire family. Your aunt and uncle are barely speaking to us. Your cousins think we're monsters. Is this what you wanted? To destroy us? I read the message several times, marveling at the complete lack of self-awareness. She was not upset about losing me. She was upset about losing her reputation. I typed a response, choosing my words carefully. I wanted to be treated with basic dignity and respect. You were unwilling to provide that. The consequences of your choices are yours to bear, not mine. Please do not contact me again. I hit send and blocked the new address, knowing another would probably appear within days. But each attempt felt less threatening than the last. Her power over me was fading, replaced by a sense of autonomy I had never experienced before. At work, the promotion Thomas had hinted at became official. I was named department manager with a 30% raise and a team of 12 people reporting to me. The announcement came at a staff meeting, and my colleagues applauded genuinely, having witnessed my dedication over the years. Speech? Thomas prompted, grinning. I stood, looking around at the faces of people who valued my contributions, people who saw my hard work and rewarded it fairly. I just want to say that this company has been more of a family to me than I realized, I said. Thank you for recognizing my efforts and giving me this opportunity. I won't let you down. The words felt right and true. Hollowgate Systems had provided the stability and validation my biological family never had. My coworkers celebrated my achievements rather than diminishing them. My supervisors promoted me based on merit rather than favoritism. After the meeting, I returned to my office, my real office now, with a door that closed and a window that overlooked the parking lot, and allowed myself a moment of quiet pride. I had built this life myself, without help from parents who saw me as secondary, without support from a sister who viewed me as competition, without anyone handing me gifts wrapped in gold bows. Everything I had earned. Spring arrived in Louisville with blooming dogwoods and warming temperatures, bringing with it a sense of renewal that mirrored my internal transformation. I had been living my new life for nearly 4 months now, and each day felt more stable than the last. I was sitting in a coffee shop near my apartment on a Saturday morning when my phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Patricia. Thought you should know. Brittany wrecked the Lexus last week. She's fine, but the car's totaled. Your parents are devastated about the money. I stared at the message, processing the information. Part of me felt nothing. The car had never been mine to care about. But another part felt a grim satisfaction at the cosmic justice of it all. A $117,000 gift destroyed through carelessness. I typed back, I hope Brittany is okay. Thank you for letting me know. My aunt's response came quickly. She's physically fine. Emotionally, she's a mess. Apparently she was texting while driving. Insurance won't cover everything because she was at fault. Your parents are looking at a huge financial hit. I closed the message without responding further. The Lexus, symbol of everything wrong with my family, was gone, and I felt nothing but peace. In the months that followed, more news trickled through. My parents, facing financial strain from the accident and the end of my father's overtime opportunities at work, had to make difficult choices. The spa trips stopped, the shopping sprees ended. Brittany, forced to rely on a used car purchased with the insurance payout, complained constantly about her reduced circumstances. They actually asked if I could help with some bills, Aunt Patricia told me over lunch one afternoon. I said no. I told them they should ask their successful daughter who manages an entire department. Diana didn't appreciate that comment. I smiled, despite myself. Thank you for standing up for me. Someone should have done it years ago. I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. The reconciliation with extended family members became one of the unexpected gifts of my transformation. Aunt Patricia and I now met for lunch monthly. My cousin Jennifer had become a regular visitor to my apartment. Even Uncle Robert called occasionally, checking in and sharing updates about his own life. I had lost my parents and sister, but I had gained something more valuable, relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Work continued to flourish. Under my leadership, the accounting department exceeded its quarterly goals consistently. Thomas praised my management style and hinted that further advancement might be possible within a few years. I was building a career I could be proud of, one achievement at a time. And personally, I was thriving. The yoga classes had become a beloved routine. The book club had expanded my reading horizons and provided genuine friendships. I had started dating again, meeting people through activities and mutual connections rather than desperate attempts to fill the void my family had created. One evening, about 6 months after that fateful Christmas, I was cleaning out my closet when I found the mug. World's okayest daughter. I had kept it as a reminder, but now I questioned whether I still needed it. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of all it represented. The years of being second best. The countless moments of being overlooked. The Christmas morning when my mother had smiled and called the arrangement fair. Then I walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and dropped it in. The ceramic shattered against the bottom with a satisfying crash. I stared at the broken pieces for a moment, then closed the lid and walked away. The past no longer had power over me. As for my parents and Brittany, their struggles continued. My mother developed health issues that required expensive treatments not fully covered by insurance. My father's retirement plans were pushed back indefinitely. Brittany, unable to maintain her lifestyle without parental support, had started working full-time for the first time in her life and complained bitterly about the injustice of it all. They had built their world around favoritism and appearances, and that world was crumbling. I took no pleasure in their suffering, but I also felt no obligation to rescue them from consequences they had created. I was sitting on my balcony one evening, watching the sunset paint Louisville's skyline in shades of gold and pink, when I realized I had finally found what I had been searching for my entire life. Not their approval, not their love, not their recognition. Peace, belonging, self-worth. Things no one could give me but myself. The journey from that Christmas morning to this moment had been painful and necessary. I had walked through fire to reach the other side, and I had emerged stronger than I ever thought possible. Looking back, I understood now that leaving was not revenge. It was survival. It was choosing myself after 29 years of being chosen last. It was building a life where my value was recognized, where my contributions mattered, where I was more than just the okayest daughter. I was Faith, manager, friend, self-made woman, and I was finally completely home.